fuck, you know. So I felt like shit, and then my dad that weekend. Again, I've always been a nerd. I've
Right.
always been into reading,
Yep.
always been into like shit like that. So I was like, okay, well, what can I read? You know? And I was like, all right, well, let's go to. For me, it was Barnes and Noble.
Barnes and
So I
Nobles.
was
Yep.
like, okay, Dad, take me to Barnes and Noble. And I was just looking for any type of book, realistically and truthfully, like get rich quick.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
honestly looking for like, how do I make money quick?
I think that's how it always starts, man. Like how
Dude,
people find their way into trading and just into like other entrepreneurial spaces or just like life ventures is it starts by you're like I need it's that like I want money now,
it's
right?
that it's that emergent like
Yeah.
I need it now
Yes,
type of feel,
absolutely.
dude.
Yeah.
And that's what I was feeling, and I'm like, fuck. So I go and here I am, this poor dad, and my dad always used to tell us, any man can have a kid,
Right.
but any guy can have a kid, but it takes a man to raise one.
Absolutely.
Right? And so he's like, dude, this is you got to do what you got to do. So he takes me to Barnes and Noble, and I'm looking for anything, and here I am, you know, for in for a sense of word, a poor dad.
Right.
I'm
Yeah.
fucking poor.
Yeah.
Like I have no money, I have no job, I have nothing going for me. I'm a poor dad, and here's this book, Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. Dude.
Yes. An epic read for anyone who has not read that book. And if this won't convince you, I don't know what will, but a amazing read. Absolutely.
Dude, and it's like the fucking lights from heaven just like shown up on this book as I'm walking through Barnes and Noble, and I'm like, oh, Rich Dad Poor Dad, and I'm like, okay. So I start reading like literally the first fucking chapter is like the rich don't work for money,
Yes.
they make money work for them.
Yes.
And that sentence just was like blew my freaking nerd mind, right? I was like, whoa. And then so I didn't have money to pay for the book, so me, my dad, and my son, who's like a year old, we stay in Barnes and Noble till I finish reading the book. And I read the fucking book at Barnes and Noble. It takes me a couple hours, and I learned three main things: the importance of real estate, the importance of business, and the importance of investments.
Yeah.
Well, I fucking had no money for real estate. Fucking no money at all.
Nope.
Didn't know what to do for business at that time.
Right.
But investing seemed cool. And going back to me being a kid, I was always into video games.
Yeah.
Dude, I played hours and hours of Metal Gear Solid, SOCOM, like
Yes.
those were the games back then. So I played hours of video games, and I was like, dude, investing seems cool, because then when he was talking in the book, it was like you could do it from a computer and whatever. And I was like, okay, well, let me try it. So I was like, all right, investing. All right, let me try it. I need a computer. I got that. Okay, we're good. All right, but the main core issue, I need money.
And all this time, you're still going to school.
And all this time, I'm still going to school.
Obviously,
Still going to raising Tay.
it. And I thought one of the things that was interesting you mentioned is that what you were studying with the anatomy, you were like, man, I want to be a surgeon. You had always had those higher goals from the beginning, right? From the beginning, and so now it's interesting to see you read this book and have it take your higher goals and almost be like, okay, maybe there's a different vehicle for me.
100%.
Yes.
100%, because in the book, I don't want to give the book away, but in the book, he talks about a rich dad and his poor dad, and his rich dad was this very educated, traditional follow the route person who got a really high paying job, or that's his poor dad, sorry.
Right.
And then his rich dad was his friend's dad, who you would never know is rich, but has all these successful businesses and is a badass entrepreneur that has all these things. So it opened my eyes at that point of like, damn, do I really want to go to school? Which I still ended up going to school. But
Yeah.
so I was like, okay, well, the still core issue and root of my problem is I have no money.
Yeah.
Well, in the book, it talked about they were trying to do side hustles to make funds, and the very first story is like they were counterfeiting coins and whatever, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, I can't do that. But I was like, okay, how could I be smart about this? So I went and got another foot job, or another shoe store job, right? And so it was like at Dick's Sporting Goods or whatever, and end up working part-time again at another Foot Locker in a different location. And so I'm working these jobs, and both are part-time because it's not essentially full-time at all.
Right.
And I started making money, And what I start to do is slang shoes on eBay.
Yeah.
And back in the day, and even still now, but I just don't hear about it now because it's not something I'm into anymore. But back in the day, Jordans used to sell off the fucking wall.
Oh yeah. Oh, that's still a huge thing, bro. The sneaker resale market is like.
Is there?
Oh yeah, big, bro. Yeah. People were literally trying like. It's an interesting side hustle. I just I found my groove with trading, but there were people who will literally, what they'll do is they will buy. They'll try and buy out their local store. There's a release coming of new shoes, and they're like, if it has a $50 profit, that's a B rating, right? Like it's really cool. Yeah,
dude,
yeah.
No, 100%.
Yeah.
So that's what I would do, and because we were employees, we would get only 12 shoes of Jordans.
Yeah.
Retro 11s, the Space Jams, or whatever.
Yeah.
And per store, only a certain percentage can reserve, right? And depending on what shoe it was. And so I would reserve some, and then I would use my check to pay for it, and then I would go and flip it immediately on eBay and make like a $200 to $300 profit.
Yep.
And I was like, this is fucking cool. And then I was like, okay, shoes is working really well. And then what I started to do was go on eBay, and this is before Gary Vaynerchuk started talking about like this whole arbitrage thing.
Yeah.
But I would go to garage sales and find shit for free or dirt cheap, and I would slang that on eBay.
Yep.
And little by little, my side hustle turned into $500 to $1,000 a week.
Yeah. Which is really reasonable if you think about it.
Which is really reasonable. It's really not far-fetched to hit that at all.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm like, okay, now all while going to school. Now, to fast forward a little bit, 2014, I get my bachelor's, BS in bio at California Lutheran University, private school, and I had to do 3 years. I had to do 4 years worth of school in 3 years.
All while working.
And raising Tay and
That's badass.
Reading. My days would consist of, I would get up at 6 in the morning. I would drive to school, which I would get there by 7. On days I didn't have lab, I would stay till 3. And then I would because I had to take a full load every quarter, semester, whatever it's called, I had to take a full load.
Right.
And more than a full load. And so then I would come home, spend a couple hours with Tay, and then I would go to work from 5 to 10. And then when I would get home, I would then study for school, which my grades for graduated undergrad, I barely graduated.
It was just you just wanted to pass.
I just wanted to pass, dude.
Yeah.
And so I would study, and then from midnight till about 1 or 2, I would read books related to investing, to trading, to money management, to personal help books, and I would stay up, and that would keep me focused. Dude, there were days when, I would get an F on a test, or I would have to retake a class, and I would have to now double jam-pack my stuff. I would get home and I would fucking cry.
Yeah.
And it's because it's like I was getting nowhere.
Yeah, bro.
And I was like, fuck, here I have this opportunity at a pretty good fucking university, and I got a scholarship. That's the only reason I was able to go. Is in JC, I got good enough grades to get a half scholarship, and then I had to take out student loans for the rest. Well, my student loan, I only can afford 3 years worth because I like maximized or some shit. So I was like, dude, I gotta jam pack it all. So I didn't have time, and so, dude, I would fucking sit there and cry, and I'd be like, dude, what the fuck? And it wasn't until that Rich Dad Poor Dad got me to thinking about doing this stuff, and it wasn't until Eric Thomas, E.T. the Preacher.
Yep, I'm very familiar with him.
I was in a football, and there was this video talks about how bad you want to breathe, and in the video, I'm not going to give it away too much, but in that video, there's this guy who wants to be successful. He meets this guru. The guru takes him out to the beach. The guru goes out deep in the water with this protege, and he puts him underwater, and he's drowning him. And the guy's like moving and moving. He comes up, and he's like, in that moment, what did you want out of anything? He's like, all I wanted was to breathe. He's like, if you treat everything in life as if you just want to breathe, you would be successful. And it goes deeper than that,
right?
And so I'm like, okay. So I got super motivated. So I would listen to Eric Thomas every morning. It was like my ritual. I would listen to him, and I would cry of anger, and I would just go out. Now, fast forward, I graduate with my BS, my Bachelor of Science in Bio, and all of my friends are like A students.
Yeah.
Here I am, the only dad, and we would get recruits that would come for temp agencies that worked for different pharmaceutical companies, like an Amgen or a Genentech or whatever, and say, hey, we have temp jobs for college students that are graduating. My grades weren't enough to get into med school, so there went that job.
Yeah.
There went that dream. And my MCAT scores I didn't even bother to take because I was like, dude, I need to make money. And this whole time while I'm going to school and I'm raising Tay and I'm reading these books, I still have the parental pressure of, once you graduate, you need to get a job.
Yep.
And this is 4 years now from the time of 19. I'm now 23. It's like, we can't keep providing for you.
Yeah.
You need a fucking job.
Yeah.
So I went the EMT route, and I was doing EMT.
Oh, I actually didn't know that. This is one part of the story that I didn't know. I didn't know you were the EMT route.
Yeah, I went EMT the last summer of my senior year of my undergrad, and I loved it. The only part I didn't like was one time we had to go out and fucking help a hobo, and I got shit thrown at me, and I'm like, dude, I don't know if I can do this for fucking $10 an hour.
Yeah,
it's like, why did I even go to school?
Yeah.
But those recruits would come, and I would always, whenever they came, I would always come dressed to the nines.
Yeah.
And granted, at this time, I don't have like dressed to the nines. It's not like I'm wearing a fucking Gucci suit,
Right.
It's like a fucking suit from Macy's that isn't even tailored, doesn't even fit me right, And I would always wear something nice, or like a sweater over my shirt, or with tie or whatever, right? And whenever they would come, I would talk to them, and they would get to know about me. And I've never hid that I had a son, and they'll be like, dude, you have a son, and you're working, and you're coming into the school, and you're showing up to these like recruiting events. And so there is a face to the name.
Yep.
And once I graduated, I was like, okay, I'm not going to do EMT. So I went back to my alma mater, and they had a sub job open, and I went to go and teach chemistry, and I graduated with bio. And for a private school, you don't need a teacher credential.
Okay.
So I was like, oh, this is great. I can sub for a little bit, and maybe they could find a job for me. And then at that point in my life, I'm thinking, okay, well, I did enough to become like a bio teacher. Maybe I was still into science. I was like, I did maybe enough to be a bio teacher, and I can go and teach football, which is what I love. Okay, this is gonna be cool. I can do this.
Yeah.
I'm cool with this. And it was 2 weeks of prep, and then on the first day of school, I shit you not, I get a call from the recruiter. Now I did 2 interviews. Rewind back. I did 2 interviews at Amgen, and I didn't think I was gonna get it. I bombed it.
Yeah.
I bombed both of them. And the very last interview that I did, as I was leaving, I was talking with the manager, and we started talking about kids. And then it blew her away that I had a kid, and she was like, so in essence, Tate kind of saved my life.
Yeah.
100%. I mean, he did save my life.
Yeah.
And so the first day of teaching undergrad, or of teaching at my alma mater, I get the call from the recruiter saying, hey, you got the job at Amgen. I didn't even fucking hesitate. At lunchtime, I go into the principal's office, and I'm like, hey, dude, like, I love you guys. You guys have been family to me, but I got the call. I got the call.
Yeah, you got the call.
I got the call. I got to take this. So I started as a temp, and now my starting salary at the time as a temp was $25 an hour. And I'm like, dude, this is pretty fucking
That's pretty fucking good.
That's pretty fucking good.
Yeah.
As a fresh undergrad student.
Yep.
And here are my other friends that were A+ students that are not at Amgen.
Yeah.
And so one of the lessons I want you guys to understand, don't matter your grades, it matters who you know sometimes.
Yes.
And who you are as a package.
Who you are as a person, and I think that's like, it just speaks volumes to like how someone will like look at you and see. Like I tweeted something the other day. I was like, because for me, it was crazy. One person told me one ambition they had in life, and it completely changed my perspective of them. I was like, whoa, like that all of a sudden, like I look at them a completely different way. And it seemed like that recruiter at Amgen found out like, oh my gosh, you're doing all of this with a kid, that shows me your work ethic. This is the guy we need to hire, right?
This is
the guy, right? And so it's not all about grades, right? Even though you're talking to two day traders whose grades ultimately did not matter, right? It's not all about grades. It's about who you know and what you can bring to the table as a whole for any business that you're looking to be involved in, right? So
100%, dude.
Absolutely.
It's all value add. And
so you go to Amgen, who you're still with to this day.
To this day. We'll get there.
Yeah.
And so I get at Amgen, I'm starting temp, and within 6 months I get full time because of the work ethic just shows. It's like all I've ever needed in life is just an opportunity.
Yeah.
Just give me an opportunity and I'll run with it. I have the work ethic to do it. And I got that work ethic through sports, you know, back in being championship team in high school. And I carried that on with me through everything. And so I get full time, and my starting salary now is $70K.
Yeah, that's not bad.
At 2014, I'm like, this is fucking cool.
Yeah.
Now, some of the stuff that we didn't talk about here is this whole time as well, I'm experimenting in the market.
Yeah.
And from 2009 till this point, I've been throwing money into investments. And since I was into bio and nerding out, all of my shit went into biotech stocks. A lot of them.
Yep.
A lot of tech stocks. Your traditional. I still have Apple since 2009.
Which is a good day. For those who don't know, buying Apple in 2009 was a good decision.
Yeah. Apple, Facebook,
all,
NVIDIA, AMD. Like, those are my long terms that I've not even sold yet.
Oh, my God.
And I've just added throughout the years. It's like, I look at it and jizz sometimes. Like, you know, like.
Oh, I 100% know the feeling. Because as much as it's shamed me to admit, I have for sure looked at a position before and just kind of had to been like, cross the leg. You're just
dude,
like, I'm excited.
Dude, I'm so excited. But
no.
So I've been investing that whole time. Now, 2014, I'm making $70,000 salary at a very prestigious company at Amgen, where we make cancer therapeutics, do stuff for Alzheimer's, and here I am working in the lab and as a scientist, and I don't need $70,000.
You now have a little bit of capital to risk.
Dude, I've been living off of $248 a month.
Yep.
And so more than 3/4 of that money went right into the market.
Yep.
By the time 2016 hits, some of my investment, and this is like during some of the biotech boom, some of the tech boom during that time, I was invested in OLED. And I remember always talking about that.
You always talked about OLED. Always talked about OLED.
Dude, that shit went from like $20 to $240. 10x its money, right? NVIDIA, Apple, Amazon, right? All these went way huge from 2014 to 2016. But then some of these biotechs that I was invested in, because I knew the science, dude, they went from like $2 a share. And these weren't the pennies yet. This is just investing. They went from like $2 to $50.
Yeah.
And I have like 10 racks in them.
Yeah.
Dude, by the time 2016 hits, I hit my first mill.
And this is not with day trading. This is more
long-term investing. And
but you had been dabbling in day trading, of course.
Of course. Yeah.
But the big wins were coming from those long-term.
100%.
Huge. Yeah.
But so 2016, I make that first mill, and then I read this book by Grant Cardone, because then I started to think, I have money for real estate.
Yeah.
You know. So then I started getting more into real estate, and I read this book by Grant Cardone, and it's called the 10x rule. And in the 10x rule, he's essentially talking about you're only 10 multiples away from making $1 million off of $1,000.
Yep.
And if you can make 1,000, you can make 10,000. If you can make 10,000, you can make 100,000. You just got to put in 10x more of the effort. And I'm like, okay, well, that sounds nice on paper, but how can I do that? And I had been dabbling a little bit in day trading, and I came across a day trading ad on YouTube. I think it was like Timothy Sykes or Ross Cameron. One of Warner Trades. And I joined them, of course.
Yeah.
And I see some crazy profit. I think one of them was like 20,000 a day. I'm like, there's no fucking way.
Yeah.
Right? Just like total sketch. Like shit. When I post my stuff now, people are like, so sketch. Dude.
Oh yeah.
You're fucking lying.
Always
You're
have to deal with. Yeah. Those two, they had some. Those two I know are some tricky. Yeah, some tricky programs for sure. Some sketchy programs. I know Ross had some issues, but they introduce you to day trading, and they show you the ropes, the rules.
What was possible, and so I didn't have the risk management that I did now.
Right.
But what I started to see, and I put 25K in, because that's what the rule was.
That was
you
the
know,
rule at the time,
being just an idiot was like, okay, I'm gonna put 25K in, you know.
Yeah.
And a couple of days I would make 5,000.
Yeah.
A couple of days I would make 10,000. But then there was days I would lose 15.
Yeah.
Lose 20. And it was just this fucking volatile roller coaster. And I'm like, dude, what the fuck? And I blow up an account.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
Naturally.
That didn't last long at all.
Yeah.
Didn't last long at all,
Yeah.
dude. And I'm like, dude, what the fuck? But what it showed me, and what was the spark in my mind, was like, dude, in a couple of hours, there were days that I made 10 racks.
Yeah.
How the fuck can I repeat that over and over?
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, I need to figure this the fuck out.
Yeah.
And so from then on, I just spent time trying, and again, going back to my nerd ways, was like, okay, let me go to statistics and try to just fucking look at this. And then that's where the 2-to-1 ratio came in.
Yeah, that risk reward,
and then
that R multiple.
And
that R multiple.
It was like a video on YouTube.
Yeah.
I want to say, or
like I bet it was the Adam, the Be the Casino one. Was it maybe one of those?
It was probably one of those. Dude.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, what the fuck? And it made sense because I was always really good at math and numbers, and I was like, it makes sense where if you just do a 1-to-1, you have to be 50% right to break even. But if you do a 2-to-1, you only need to be 33% right to just break even. Anything more than that, you're making profit, so long as you keep those numbers consistent. And that was the key, though, is keeping those numbers consistent. And just a fucking light bulb went off. I was like, holy fuck. It was like unlocking the Kama Sutra for fucking trading, you know? And I'm like, dude, no way. And so I go and trade, and I'm like, okay, well, let's break this down simpler. I have a hundred, let's just say a $25,000 account. I'm only going to use a portion of that, and of that portion, I'm going to consistently use this dollar amount, and I'm going to aim for 10% profit target, 5% stop.
Using your trading shares at the time.
And trading shares at the time. Trading pennies, right? And so essentially that dollar stock needed to go to $1.10, and I'll make 10%. I started to do really well at that. Yeah. And I was like, oh shit. In my first year doing it, before it became a business, I think I made like $125,000. And I'm like, I'm like, fuck yeah, you know, on top of my work. I was like, fuck yes, this is the tits. And I was telling my friend about this, and she knew that I had made a mill, and she knew my story coming up, and she's like, I need help. I'm a single mom. I have 3 kids. I need help. And I'm like, okay, I'm gonna help you. And I help her. Fast forward to today, she's a CPA. She averages somewhere north between $500 to $2,000 a day trading. And she was a CPA for multiple different firms, and she works all remote. She was a single mom, 3 kids, 3 jobs. Damn. And put the work in. Right. And during the time that I was helping her, my now wife, not the person that I was helping became my wife, but my wife, she's like, Andrew, you need to make this a business. Yeah. And I'm like, I can't do that, because growing up in a Hispanic household, and the way that money was tight for us. It's not like, you know, my parents they gave us really good experiences. We went to Disneyland, we would go to Hawaii once in a while, but it's not like we were my family driving around Ferraris, or they had college educations, right? And so, you know, they were always like, save your money. That was always been the thing. Like, work hard, get a good job, save your money. That was it. There was never investing. Investing was seen as gambling, or, you know, you being an idiot. And so I was like, but also being raised, you were also taught never to talk about your marriage or like your love life, never to talk about politics or money. Like, you just keep that stuff private. That's how it was always. That stays inside the house. And I'm like, fuck. Now I'm gonna go on social and start talking about this stuff. Like, and so I was nervous. My initial thing was fear of like, people are gonna start looking at me like all I am is about money, you know, and that's not the case. Yeah. And I'm gonna get people that start to like talk shit or doubt, and I'm like, oh, fuck. And I'm like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm just gonna do it. And so I started doing it, and to go back just a little bit, right before I started doing the trading thing, I was trying to do social media marketing. And that's where I found Ty Lopez. Okay, yeah. And Ty Lopez was doing this whole thing of like, this is what you need to do to market for other people. And I tried to do it, and it just didn't work out. But I met people along the way. But what I learned, though, was some valuable skills in terms of marketing. in terms of creating a story and being authentic. And authenticity, as long as you're true to yourself and you're honest, that sells. You don't have to be. Now, granted, Ty Lopez kind of contradicts himself a little bit there.
He does. He
did some crazy shit in the beginning. But, I was like, why am I going to market for someone when I could just market for me?
Yeah.
And so I was like, let me do what I know best, which is right now at this point, I'm doing pretty good at this 2-to-1 ratio.
Yeah.
Start the business and then certain things come along the way.
So let me pause you there because I think this is an interesting time, because at one point Andrew has that 2016 year, makes 125K, which is crazy for your first full year of trading. I wish I made money during my first year of trading or my second year of trading.
But I did blow account.
Oh yeah, you did blow an account. You did blow an account. This is true. But Andrew then decides to start posting on Instagram and start showing off some of the education that he's offering for people and some of the programs.
Yeah.
And I then see one day on Instagram, I was like, oh, looks like this dude made some money off his computer today or off his phone. And then I saw another Robinhood screenshot of someone making $400 in a day. And I'm thinking in my head, much like you, when you first were looking for books to try and get rich quick, you went into that bookstore with the intention of finding a book to get rich quick. I, in my head, was like, I would love $400 to go buy some weed and get some drinks tonight. Like that, honest to God, that was the first thing that popped into my mind. I mean, granted, I was a junior in college at the time. I was like, yeah, beer money, let's go, right?
Yeah.
So I ended up looking into. This is why I didn't want to give too much away in our intro clip, because I ended up finding a service and subscribing to that service, and within that, I end up meeting you. And at some point there was a middleman, this whole confusing spiel, but what ends up coming from that is I ultimately see Andrew, I see his Discord, I see everything that he's able to offer, and most importantly, I see that every day you're really doing this. Every day you are up. It wasn't easy work, and you were clear with us on that. And you were clear with us. I thought it was really crazy because one day we were all in Andrew's Discord, me and a couple of other beginners, and and like you yelled at us one day. I don't know if you remember this, but we were all swinging tops.
Oh yeah, dude.
We were swinging. Everyone. It was like shipper season or something. I don't know if any of you've been trading long enough or trading pennies long enough to realize that, but for some reason, all new traders believe that it's free money when it becomes like near the holidays on these shipping companies, because they're shipping more for Amazon. It's like a total scam, right? They're just it never happens once. But I remember one day we were all us like degenerates in the chat were like swinging tops for like 3 days, 4 days straight, while you were telling us, and at one point you were like, bro, I day traded this stock 4 days ago and I haven't touched it since. What are you guys doing? And you gave us like this like, it wasn't like a yell, but you kind of in like a coaching way, you yelled at us where you were like, yo, if you're here to be a degenerate and just fucking gamble,